working hard because work will set you free. Hi guys, thanks for coming to my channel. This is where we're going to be looking at audiobooks and how we can improve what we can do and what we can learn from some of the best audiobooks in the world. And I want to let you in on a little secret. If you're not a fast reader, I'm not either. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be conquering that with audiobooks. We can listen to the audiobooks. I'll show you how, and if you have any questions, let me know. So let's get into this. I look forward to going on this journey with you. The last chapter of The Richest Man in Babylon, and it's called The Luckiest Man in Babylon. So what this story is about is a guy called Sharunada. So Sharunada is riding with his old friend's grandson. The friend has passed away. And he's troubled. He's riding at the head of a long procession of people that he all, owns. He's a very wealthy man, but he's troubled even though you wouldn't know it. And the reason he's troubled is because of the attitude of the youngster near him. As he's thinking these thoughts, the youngster breaks in and says, "Hey, why do you ride at the front of all your procession? If I was you, if I was rich, I would be relaxing, I'd be spending the money as fast as it came, I'd be chilling out. That if he was rich, he'd be having a fine life." So then, as they are making it towards Babylon in Syria, they approach the city walls, and the grandfather says, "Oh look, there are the city walls of Babylon. This is where your grandfather made most of his money." And the youth says, "Oh gosh, well, I wish that he was still around because my father and I don't have the skills that he did that enabled him to make money." So as they approach, they see a field, and the three men ploughing that field seemed oddly familiar. And he remembers 40 years ago or so when he was coming back, this is actually the same people. These are the same people that he saw then. And he's like, wow, look at these guys, not working hard, listlessly whipping the ox to plough the field. And he says, how can they expect to get a good yield if they're not doing hard work and they're not encouraging the ox to dig deeply? This is where he decides to tell the youth, who doesn't really want to work hard, who seems that he doesn't want to enjoy any of the labours of life but wants to get all the rewards, when he decides that he's going to help this kid understand. He's not going to do half a job because him and his grandfather never did half a job. So he's going to go all the way. And he asked the youth, "Hey, would you like me to tell you about how your grandfather and I made our money in the first place?" And he says, "Yes, please, tell me." No. And the youth says, "Just tell me how you made the money. I don't need to know the big story." He ignores this and carries on with his story regardless. He says that when we were arriving into this city 30 years ago, he was a slave. He was tied to a guy called Megiddo, tied to a guy called Zabado, and tied to another guy called Pirate. Megiddo said that work would be his best friend. As they're approaching, the grandson says, "Tell me, how did you become a slave?" This is where Sharunada says, anybody can become a slave. His specific circumstances were because of gambling debts, but other people can have different circumstances that end up enslaving them. The youth is eager to find out, hey, how did you become a slave and how did you get out of that? He says, we'll get to that in a minute. Then he says that when they were chained up walking towards Babylon, they passed these same farmers who jeered and laughed and said, hey, the emperor's welcome awaits you. You've got onion soup and hard back-breaking work. Brilliant. Sharunada's worried, and in the night before they go to the slave market, he asks the guy, hey, how do I make sure that I get a good job or a good master? That, that I don't need to, get whipped to death or beaten to death. What can I do? His friend says that what you need to do is you need to go talk to people often. He says when you go to the slave market, you need to talk to as many people as possible. Make yourself stand out. Make sure that people want to buy you. If you don't make people want to buy you, tomorrow you'll be carrying bricks. And bricks is hard, back-breaking work. You don't want to do that. He is excited and he says to Megiddo, this is what they need to do. Megiddo likes work and now he's like, yeah, okay, I like work as well. I'm going to stand out and I'm going to be the best guy that I can be to help these guys purchase me. Megiddo realizes that they might be parted soon in the slave market, and he tells Sharunada that you need to make sure that work is your friend. Don't look at work as a pain that you have to do. Look at it with happiness, that this is what gets you to your end destination, that this is the thing that will help build your future. Look at it like that, work as hard as you can, give more than you can, and you will be repaid. If you think about the thing you're going to build, who cares if the weights are heavy? Who cares if the burden is a big one? He says, work well done does good to the man who does it, even if it's not appreciated. It's almost the end of the day, and if they're not sold, they're going to go to the king's justice to be sold to make bricks and to carry the heavy weights. This is when a fat, good-natured guy comes along and asks if anyone's a baker. So then Sharunada says, look, I'm a hard worker. Why don't you hire me and teach me how to bake rather than using a baker that already has bad habits you need to teach out of him? Use me. He's correct. he's sold, and he gets to go to do a job that isn't completely backbreaking. And Sharonada feels like the luckiest man in Babylon. He said he felt like the luckiest guy in the world because he'd been sold to a good place. He said when he got there, he wanted to learn how he could bake as quickly as possible. He asked one guy to help him understand how to knead the bread. Once he understood that, he asked to know how to do something else. Once he knew how to make cakes, he was in the money. So he'd make bread for his master up until about 12. And then after that, he asked his master if he could make extra money and split that money with him. His master said, yeah, sure, that'd be fantastic. So they made an agreement. The master would pay for the equipment and the materials to make the cakes, and then he would split the profits 50-50 with his master. So he'd get fully a quarter of everything that he sold, and he was really happy with this. He said at night his mind was racing on how he could earn his freedom in the future. He was really happy and excited. So he did it. He went out and started to sell his cakes. At first, no one wanted to buy, and he was a bit downhearted. But then, as guys started to get hungry towards the end of the day, people started to buy his cakes, and he made the money. He went home, split it with his master, and he was happy. He was on the way to earning his freedom. One of the customers was no other than this kid's grandfather, and they become best friends. He bought the cakes, and he said, I like the cakes, but I like more the way that you sell them. Tell me about yourself. He said that he was a slave and that he was working hard to earn up enough money to buy his freedom. This is when the grandfather asks him, okay, what would you do if you had your freedom? And he says, well, I'd become a merchant and I'd sell things and I'd blah, blah, blah. And he'd become the best person that he can. As time went on, his master actually started to get into trouble, and he started to rely on the money that he was making from selling the honey cakes. So when he got back, he was already waiting for him. He then said, why don't you go and sell them further afield, go past the city walls? As he went out there, he bumped into his old friend, Pirate, who was not looking good. He was working hard, but because he was looking to fight and challenge people and argue, he was having a terrible time. He said he ran away from him before the guy could steal the rest of his honey cakes. Aragula once asked him, why do you work so hard? And he told him how Megiddo had said that hard work can become your best friend because it can lead you to the future that you want to build. When he tells him this story and how he wants to become a merchant, the grandfather says, I'm also in leagues with my master and I'm actually a slave as well. And once I've earned enough money, I'll buy my freedom too. The grandson hears this and incredulous and angry. He says, my grandfather was not a slave. He was loved and, treasured by all. He wasn't, he wasn't hated. And he says, well, no, he wasn't. But that's because he got himself out of that through hard work. And through hard work, he managed to buy his freedom. The freedom that he bought allowed him to earn the respect and the money of all the things that were to come. He said that he now had enough money to buy his freedom, but he was worried. The sales were dwindling and he wasn't sure if he should do it, if he should buy his freedom. This is when Sabado said, do it, buy your freedom. He told him the story about hard work and how hard work can become your best friend. And that through hard work and determination, the rewards will come. Do it, he said. He says, act like a free man and succeed like a one. The next time he meets Aragula, he was a free man and he was joyed to tell his friend, hey, look, I did what you said, I bought my freedom and it's all going really well. Thank you. Sharonada was happy that he could help, even in a small way, to get his friend or his new friend and past customer to enjoy and get his freedom, to take it. But unfortunately, Sharonada's master was a gambler. He lost some money and troubling times happened. Because he was property and a slave, he was then taken to pay some of his debts. He was stolen and without a word, he was just taken because of the debts that his master owed. He said he started to do backbreaking work for the king, needed to build a tunnel or some kind of construction site, and the work was hard. He buried his pocket of coins in a place and he wondered, will I ever be able to dig this up again and buy my freedom? Months carried on and he felt his will start to break. He stopped being able to eat, stopped being able to drink. Fevered dreams started to take him and he thought that all was lost. He said, I should have done what Zabado said and worked not so hard. But that wasn't the key because he remembered he had a terrible outcome. Then he said he should have done what Pirate did. But Pirate also was fighting and he was killed for killing one of the king's guard. That was a terrible plan. He realised that the best plan was to work hard like Megiddo had said. Work hard and the work will set you free. Then, luckily, he got a message from his old master. He was being recalled home and he could go back. So he digs up his pocket of coins, goes back to find his friend. So Sabado digs up his pocket of coins, goes back, and when he goes back, he finds his friend, Aragula. And this is the moment that Aragula greets him like a friend. He said he would have followed him like a slave, but he wouldn't allow it. He told him that he had been able to find him, he'd been looking for him everywhere, he'd almost given up, and then, once he found him, he was able to buy his freedom. He says, today is the last day that you will become a slave. Gets out the stone tablets that symbolise his slavery and he smashes them on the floor and he says, you're free now. And the truth was that work and hard work had set him free. He says the reason he set him free is because he wants him as a partner, because his work ethic gave him the keys to set himself free, and his work ethic would also be useful in a partnership. He said work had set him free, and working hard had given him all this. This is when the grandson says, was it the hard work that set him free? And he says, yes, this is all that he had. He had no money, but the hard work allowed him to build this empire that you now see. As they approach the gates, everyone welcomes them in and parade. The guards open the gates and welcome them in. And this is when the grandson thanks his friend, his grandfather's friend, for giving him this gift. He says, I've always wanted to be like my grandfather, but I didn't know what kind of a man he was. Now I do, and you've allowed me to see that I can do the same too. By working hard, being determined, and working like I love it. Working hard because work will set you free. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and if you want to subscribe, that would be fantastic. Hope you've enjoyed my review of The Richest Man in Babylon, and stay tuned for my next video tomorrow at 6 PM. Thanks, guys. See you later.